Ahaz. The Bible records that he and his grandson Amasa are the two worst kings of Judah. Now, to understand what's going on here, you have to understand the regional problem. You have Assyria. Now, there's a little bit of confusion about Assyria and Syria. Assyria is the world power. Syria is the regional country. So I'll refer to Syria as Damascus and Assyria as Nineveh. That might help keep the two straight. Well, Nineveh is becoming a world power, and they're moving in. They slowly are taking over more and more land, and now they're just north of Damascus and Israel, a major threat. And suddenly these two nations that have been fighting all these years suddenly realize they need to get their act together, and they need to form an alliance against this huge power. Several things happen here, though. When Nineveh becomes weak temporarily, when they kind of pull back temporarily, Israel went through a time of prosperity under Jeroboam. And then you have Judah becoming very powerful under Uzziah. And this is a time of prosperity, and Uzziah becomes so powerful that he takes over portions of Damascus land and Israel. He dies. Syria becomes strong again. Assyria. Nineveh becomes strong again. And the need for alliance is very strong. Damascus and Israel, man, Nineveh's right there. They look down at Judah and they say, the three of us need to form an alliance, become very strong against this powerful world power. But Uzziah is dead. Jotham is now king. He's continuing on the policies of his father. He's also powerful. But this is their chance. They can take back some of this territory that belongs to them. Or they could form an alliance. But could you do both? Could you take back the land first and then real quick try to make peace and form an alliance? Not likely. But still possible. They knew they needed to form the alliance, but all these generations of land grabbing, this was their opportunity, and they couldn't pass it up, and they went in and took back the land that they felt belonged to them. In doing this, it caused something in Jerusalem. There was a pro-Nineveh party that saw this as an opportunity to say, look, they're going at war with us. These two nations are against us. We need the help of Nineveh. They were pro-Nineveh. So they became powerful, and using this opportunity, they took their king, Jotham, and put him under house arrest. Didn't kill him. Put him under house arrest and made his pro-Nineveh son their king. His name, Ahaz. And that brings us to our story. Ahaz becomes king. He is pro-Nineveh. Damascus moves in and tries to force him back to the anti-Nineveh side. They came in and they hit Jerusalem, take away captives. Well, instead of driving Ahaz to the anti-Nineveh stance, he appeals to Nineveh. Says, we will be your subject. We will submit to you. Here's all our gold and silver. I am your servant. I'm like your son now. Well, Nineveh This is all they've been waiting for. 3 kingdoms stand in their way of getting to Egypt. 3 kingdoms: Damascus, Israel, and Judah. Together, they form a powerful force. But Judah is now on their side. So they hit Damascus. They destroy it. They completely eliminate it from being a nation. They take their people off the land and send them into exile. Now they own 2 of the 3. They simply turn to Israel, and Israel says, "We give up. We are your servant." Nineveh wins. But now that they own it all, they don't really care for Judah. Israel sees this. They move against Jerusalem. They take it over. They kill many of the people there, including some of the sons of Ahaz, and take a huge amount of people captive. All of this is the background and the history of this dramatic story. Now, as I mentioned, Ahaz and his grandson Amasa are the 2 worst kings. And one of the things that was so bad about them is that they both practiced the ritual of child sacrifice. And they did this in the valley of Gehenna. This is a valley on the west side of the old city of Jerusalem, a deep valley. It was a beautiful valley, and they used this as a place for child sacrifice. Because of that, later on in history, Josiah comes along and he wants to just eliminate all idol worship, especially this child sacrifice. So he takes the valley and he desecrates it. He dumps all the filth of Jerusalem in that valley so it can never again be used as a place of any religious services. He puts dead bodies there. He puts the filth. He puts all the garbage. He even puts in sulfur and brimstone to keep the fire going all the time. So trash is being burnt there all the time. The fire never goes out. He throws dead bodies in there, animals, and also criminals are thrown in there so that criminals, they believed back in those days that if you were thrown into this trash heap that you could never be a part of the resurrection if you weren't properly buried. And so these dead bodies meant that worms were constantly there eating these dead bodies. And so years later, Jesus uses that valley as an illustration of hell, where the flame never goes out and the worm never dies. All that goes back to this man right here, Ahaz. He's the one that used that valley for child sacrifice. You see how important this story is in the entire history of Israel, and as we go into the New Testament. Well, come back next week when we continue on with the story of the week, and we'll be talking about Israel going into captivity. We'll see you next week.